Right, good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock. I think there's a few people still sort of just coming onto the webinar now, but in the interest of time, I think we'll get going. So welcome to our webinar this morning. Nothing like pressure on a webinar when it's got a big 15 minutes right at the top of it to make sure I keep to my time. I'm going to pre-warn you now, when I've last practiced this, it went slightly over. So we'll call it stoppage time today. So it might be a couple of minutes over, and hopefully this will cover, obviously, this threat that we're going to talk about, this recent threat that we've seen coming up in people's inboxes recently. I know everyone's probably got their mind on something else to watch today, later on this evening, so hopefully this will at least be one of the top two things that you watch today. So as an introduction to myself, my name's Phil Denham. I'm the commercial director at HBP, and as you see, this webinar is on behalf of HBP and Cameron. If you're not aware of the link, we are sister companies. So obviously, like I say, these webinars are being carried out on behalf of both companies. The reason I'm giving this webinar really is you may have heard some of the things I've done over the last couple of years. I've been the lead really when it comes to GDPR and talking about GDPR. So I do come from this as having a big passion for cybersecurity, and I genuinely believe what we're going to talk about is really important. It's very relevant. It's happening right now. And it's actually a little bit different to some of the threats that maybe we've talked about in the past that are, let's say, generic. This is a very specific one that's acting in an ever so slightly different way, which means that some of the traditional approaches we've taken to spotting spam emails need to be considered when we're looking at this email coming in. Just from a housekeeping point of view, we have got just check, someone's just asked if they can see my screen. Hang on, let me just see. Hopefully you can all see my screen. I'll just double check, and if there's any problems, just chuck a thing in the chat if you can't see it, but hopefully that is showing. If you do have any questions, there is a little questions box. Please feel free to ask questions along the way. I'll typically pick them up at the end. It's just slightly out of my line of vision, but if there's any questions, please feel free to chuck them in. Okay, we should be moving on slides now. She should see a slide called why is it important now? Okay, so the reason this is important now is, like I said, we've seen a huge amount of attacks going out in this way. So this is very topical, relevant at the moment, and it's a big scale kind of attack that's happening in multiple places. And we'll come on to the specifics of that attack a bit later on. And the main thing is they look like they're coming from genuine accounts. So that means that they're a lot trickier to spot, and they actually are coming from genuine accounts, and that's what makes it really tricky to spot. Because of that, and because of a few other things, that means they're not being picked up by antivirus or a spam protection or all of these things that we've probably invested in, which makes it a lot more difficult. And of course, GDPR. Now, I've been talking about GDPR for about 2 years now, and I would love to say that I'd never have to say those 4 letters again, but unfortunately, this is relevant to GDPR, and what's happening can ultimately put you in kind of a data breach area when it comes to GDPR. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Just to clarify some of the terminology, the main one is phishing with a PH. The terminology of phishing is really about a social engineering kind of, so trying to trick people into doing things. Normally distributed by email, and in this case it is. The word phishing comes a bit of a play on words, the whole idea of casting out a net and catching as many people as you possibly can in that net. So it is really a bit of a spray and pray approach. But the difference in this phishing attack is it is a little bit more targeted, and the sort of terminology then goes into sort of spear phishing or whaling, of trying to catch specific people out with a specific type of attack. So although this is in some respects a bit of a mix between the two, it is a lot more targeted than our traditional phishing attack. The other bit of terminology I may use is malware, which is basically a shortened version of malicious software. So just to clarify, if I talk about phishing, you know what that is. If I talk about malware, you know what that is. So the impact of indeed any phishing email, and in particular the ones we're seeing today, is first and foremost that GDPR side of things. So data is being accessed in these attacks and potentially stolen, which could be considered a data breach. Now, without going into too much detail, if your company suffers a data breach, effectively there's a decision to be made to decide whether or not you need to self-report yourself to the ICO, the governing body around GDPR. That may lead to a potential fine. That may lead to you having to inform your customers that that data has been stolen or has been accessed. So there's some definite impacts around GDPR there that could come into play. More importantly, probably company reputation. So let's start touching on this specific email, which we'll see in a bit. Ultimately, what is happening is people are being fooled into giving away their login details for their Microsoft accounts, their Office 365 account, which gets them access to their email. That email account is then being used to send out more emails. So ultimately, from a company reputation point of view, you've got dodgy, spammy emails going out from your real company address, from your real company email to your potential customers, your suppliers, your prospects, and anyone else that deals with your company. So the reputation side of things is really critical here. If you take your business head out of it for a minute, if you're giving away your login details and your password, potentially that is data that you use in your personal life as well, especially maybe your password. We know a lot of people still use their same password in multiple places. So giving that away freely and willingly could cause some potential risk to your own data. And of course, the company data as well. First and foremost, it's accessing your company email address. So the data in there is at risk. And it will also potentially lead to things in the future, which means that from a security point of view, this might not just be about sending emails from your account. And in the future, you might get targeted with something a little more severe, such as some malware that contains something like a crypto kind of attack where data is encrypted and a ransom fee is put on that data in order to get it back. So the future risks of that are absolutely there as a potential. And finally, I'm going to play on your emotions a little bit. You do not want to be the source of this problem. You do not want to be the person that clicked on that email, that opened it up, that put in your password, that meant that it was your email address that started sending these things out. I don't want to be that person. I'm pretty sure you don't want to be that person. So today is going to be about what we look for and actually how do we adapt that to this risk that's coming out. So we're going to start with the what do we normally look for. Effectively, this is our traditional approach to how do we spot a spam email. This might be a little bit of egg sucking going on here. You probably know some of this stuff already, but it's worth a refresher, and it's also going to set us up to then why these new threats are a potential risk. This is an email, if you look at this date, I think it's from 2011. I've been using this email for years because it's a great example of a sort of rubbishy email you get through that you can spot things at. So if you get this sort of email into your inbox, there's some things that are immediately going to kind of heighten your guard and think, what is this real? Should I really be doing anything with this? So the first one we might be looking at, if you look at the top, the from address says PayPal, then notice at paypal.com. So immediately we can see that is not a genuine PayPal address, or at least we wouldn't expect that to be a genuine PayPal address. We can move on to Dear PayPal Customer, so a lack of personalization from a company that I would know would hold my name and my details because I've given it to them, but they're not choosing to use that there. If you read the context of the email in the sort of the 3-line paragraph, it talks about an attached form that I need to fill out. And probably the biggest thing here is the context and the fact that it says in the subject line, you have changed your PayPal email address. It talks about in the actual content that I've changed my email address and that I need to authorize this and do X, Y, and Z. Have I actually done that? Do you mean, am I expecting this email? Have I done what they've said I've done? Because if I haven't, that should probably be the main thing that stops me doing anything with this email. And that is going to be critical going forward when we look at this new threat. A more sort of common one that we might get into businesses that is really easy to spot. So this should be like shooting fish in a barrel in terms of saying we don't open these. I mean, dodgy from address straight away. It's to recipients. So it's a mass email. It's got a subject line that's pretty damn horrible. The actual content is fairly badly worded with poor English, poor grammar. Potentially this is a person that we've not dealt with before, coming from China. All of these things are instantly going to make us go, no, we're not going to open this. Again, it talks about an attached shipping document in there. So immediately our risk is very high on that one, and we should know what we're looking for. So to recap, we're going to be looking at the sender's email. We're going to be looking at personalization, whether it is there or isn't there. Potentially logos and design. Does this look like a genuine email? Certainly if it's coming from a larger company. Does it have all the things that we would expect, their logos, etc.? If it's coming from a person maybe that we do expect, is it got their footer on there? Is it designed in the way that we'd expect their emails to look? Links and attachments are always going to be a potential risk, so we need to be confident that we're expecting that to come to us. We're expecting a link or we're expecting an attachment. And as I've mentioned, most importantly, that context. Were we expecting this email in the first place? Do we know who this person is? And is this the sort of email they would send to us? So that would be our normal approach. But let's now look at the current threat. Now, The next slide I'm going to show you is a real email. You will see from the date it's recent, which obviously shows you these things are happening. And I've had to blank out a lot of information for that. Obviously, I don't want to put the company and the person whose kind of emails this is out there and see everyone, so that everyone can see it. So there's a lot of red on here, so I apologize for that, but I'll kind of talk through that of what everything is. So here's the email. You can see where I've blocked things out, but only I've left the word Ian in there. That's as much information as you're going to get. But the blanks at the top, so I've blanked out the surname, I've blanked out the full email address. You can see the subject line is personalized around that person's name. The middle part of the email is personalized around that person's name and the email address, inviting me to see this invitation, to see this document that's called event details. It's signed off, it's got a footer on it with all of the information that is real and genuine. So this is the email that's going around basically. It is from a real person. It's from a real email address, which is why there's the footer on there and the proper email address and all of that stuff. There's no obvious bad grammar or bad spelling. Design is a maybe, it's okay. But more importantly, do you know what I mean, when there's the footer on there, it does look pretty genuine straight away. So these emails are being sent out, like I say, from genuine email addresses to people within that either address book or recent people that they've contacted. So the context as well could potentially be good there. So if I do click on that view invitation link, what I'm then sent to is something like this. Now this is our genuine login page at HBP, for example. And what I would be doing there is I would be obviously looking to log in as normal there. So in that address, in that area, I'll be putting in my email address and my password, and I'll be clicking sign in. And of course, because what I'm being sent to is not a genuine login page, I'm not going to get access to that document that I've been promised. Actually, what's going to happen is those credentials are going to be stolen. So I have now given someone my login details for my account, which means that they can then log into my account and do whatever they want with that, basically. So that is the risk we're talking about here. And traditionally what's then happening is that person's logging in and sending more of those emails out. So it's a massive credential harvesting approach, this. So you get into someone's account, you send out a bunch more. You get into 2 more accounts, you send a bunch more. Another couple, 4, 8 accounts, and you do more and more and more. So all of this data is being harvested in terms of usernames and passwords on a mass scale. And as you can see, this is all based on someone giving away that information pretty much willingly. So what we would normally look for. So our sender's email, in this case, it's absolutely genuine because we know it's coming from that person. The personalization is there to a point. Obviously, it's maybe not using my details, but it's certainly using the sender's details to make it look genuine. The logo's designed, like I say, it's not bad. Certainly with the email footers that go on there, it certainly looks more genuine than most things we've seen. There's no attachments on there. There's a link that is sending us in the same way that you might get shared a link. So it doesn't look too bad straight away. And even if we were to hover over that link and see where it's going, actually, we might not recognize that address naturally, because would you know what that address is? It's very different from seeing, for example, an email from your bank or from PayPal, where you know that's meant to go to a specific URL. When we're sharing to a file, we might not really know what that should look like. And the context is a could be. And this is probably the only question mark then of saying, am I really expecting this person to be sending me a document? Even though I've had contact with them in the past, have they given me any kind of heads up that they are going to send me a document? So that is the real big one that we need to be absolutely on board with here, have our wits about us to make sure that we are thinking, should I be getting this email from that person? Because all of those other things that we look for could absolutely trick us in this scenario. We obviously mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, I think in the title as well, that spam antivirus is not necessarily going to help us. And you might ask why. Well, first and foremost, it's not a spam email. It's targeted. It's from a real address. So as far as your spam protection is concerned, that is coming from one of your real contacts. So straight away, that is going to get through. The email contains no malicious content itself, so we've already said there's no attachments on there. There's nothing in that email that would warrant being flagged up in any way. The links and even the website itself contains no malicious content, so there are no viruses, there's no malware in that link or on that website. It is simply a fake login page, so there is nothing there again for antivirus necessarily to get worried about and to start blocking. You may argue that something like content filtering that that prevents us going on things like spoof pages or malicious pages could pick that up. But actually that URL, they're clever enough to know that that URL can be changed very often. And of course, if we get an email like that, quite often we're actioning that within minutes, maybe within hours at worst case. So that scenario of something to be able to pick that up, identify that it's part of a much bigger scheme, is very difficult to do. It does take time to roll that out to all the different security vendors. So straight away, if they're changing that on a regular basis, it becomes an almost impossible task to keep up with that. And like I say, there's no virus here. There's no virus, there's no malware. So when we come to our traditional methods of stopping these sort of threats, actually this is really circumnavigating that and finding a different way and focusing on the person. Another quick one, just so we understand it, of what is the aim of the hacker? If someone is doing this, why are they doing it? So obviously they're harvesting username and passwords. That may be their main intent. And then they might be using that to log into other services. So if you've given them your email address, your password, you're using that in multiple places, that might get into somewhere where there's maybe a little bit more meaty information. They are obviously using email addresses to send more spam. There's a cost involved in sending emails full stop by having some sort of account or a server or a service or anything like that. So they're keeping their costs right down by using your email address, your reputation, your subscriptions as well. So there's definitely that angle to it. There could be an element then, and this is probably where we're going, we're seeing much longer term sort of hacking processes now. So the further social engineering process is probably in there. So this time it's about getting your username and password. Next time it might be about getting your credit card details. It might be about getting to sign up to something maybe where you end up giving sort of your bank details away. Or it might be, again, about getting you to click on a link that might have something more malicious on it, like a crypto kind of attack, some malware that would encrypt data on your machine or on the server, and then a ransom fee be charged for that. So ransomware, basically. So that next step on of almost identifying who are the people that will click on these emails, where can I go next to actually make them take another step going forward. But you can bet your bottom dollar that eventually this will be monetized one way or another. So these people aren't out there to have a little bit of fun. This is all about making money. So the long-term game on this will be eventually to monetize it. So it's about not being in that loop, not being part of this kind of attack if it's a long game approach. Okay, so what do we do? First and foremost, so I'm afraid this is really over to the individual, because like I say, the protection that's in place can only go so far. As individuals within an organization, whether you're the MD or any job role in the company, it doesn't really matter. You need to be vigilant about the emails that you're getting. You need to consider, is that meant to be what it appears to be, basically? Is this too good to be true? And the key one is, are we expecting it? And if we're not expecting it, you've got to go and check. So if it's somebody within your organization, you get off your bum and you go and ask them. If it's someone outside your organization, you pick up the phone and you say, I've got an email from you. I'm not entirely sure it's from you or it's genuine. Did you send it to me? It is the only surefire way of being certain. Clicking on it and trying to find out and seeing if it does anything is absolutely not the way. So if it is raising your alerts and you're thinking this is not kind of what I'm expecting, you need to check with someone. If it's from a bigger organization, like I say, like a PayPal or whatever, then we can go and log in through the URL and we can check to see if those alerts, those warnings that we're being told about actually are in our account. Now, at the moment, we're seeing this through Microsoft accounts. It's still ongoing at the moment, so you need to be vigilant on that one. But you also need to consider that in the future, this might adapt and change. Next time, it might be Google Drive, it might be an Amazon login, it might be eBay, it might be anything. So this is, yes, it's Microsoft at the moment, but this could change, and we would expect that it will change at some point as people clock onto it. And a final note, don't forward that email around. Don't forward it to your IT company. Don't forward it to your IT person. Don't forward it to your colleagues. Don't send it back to the person who sent it to you. Screenshot it, fine, that's absolutely no problem whatsoever, but don't send the email around. At the moment, this is credential harvesting, but again, if we get to a point where this becomes malware, then that's a very different kettle of fish. Okay, so just finally, just to recap that impact, just to make sure it's absolutely clear, this could end up being a data breach. So as you can imagine, if someone gets into your email account, starts sending out emails, accessing data, there needs to be a decision made of whether or not you believe you've had a data breach, and obviously take the necessary steps around that. The company reputation, absolutely. Like I say, sending out dodgy emails from real accounts within your organization to your customers, your suppliers, etc., is not a good thing. Your personal data is at risk. We're not going into passwords management and all of that today, but obviously consider the fact that you shouldn't be using the same password across multiple sites, and the responsibility you have as an employee. Remember, the company data and the security of that data is potentially at risk if you start clicking on emails and doing things without checking and making sure that it's something to be safe on. And like I say, I don't want to be that person. You don't want to be that person. So make sure that you are taking that risk from a personal point of view as well. And finally, if you need help around this, the key things we can do here at HBP and Cameron, we can offer ongoing training. We use something called Sophos Fish Threat. It's a solution that basically sends out regular emails to your staff to do two things. One, to train them, so they have to complete online training sessions. Also to test them, so it sends out emails that are potentially dodgy, and if they click on them, they get sent on more training. And you'd rather they clicked on those dodgy emails than real ones, for sure. And also you can report on that to identify any risks within your business. This webinar, I know we've got a lot of people on this webinar today, which is great, but we are recording it. You will get the link. You will be able to send it out. You will be able to share it with your staff and hopefully get them to watch it as well, because there's lots of people, obviously, that aren't here that I'm sure within your organization that need to be just as vigilant as you're going to be. And finally, if you do think you've got a bigger problem, and actually when I'm talking about antivirus and malware and spam protection, all that, and you think, do you know what, we haven't even done that, you can speak to us. We will do security reviews. We will help you with that side of things as well. And that's it. I don't know how much stoppage time we got today, but I have obviously gone slightly over 15 minutes, so I apologize for that. That is it. Like I say, hopefully I haven't taken too much more of your time than you expected this morning. If you have questions, there is a questions section. I know it's probably not the sort of webinar that will bring up loads of questions, but I'm more than happy to stick around and answer them. Failing that, if you want to ask me anything specific, there's my email address. Please don't send me any attachments or dodgy links. I won't be opening them. But thank you very much for your time. I will stick around for 5-10 minutes just in case there are any questions. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully enjoy the football as well. Other than a few messages of it's coming home, one quick question is, can we send the slides out as well? Yeah, that's absolutely no problem. We'll make sure the slides are available as well as the recording as well itself. Just another quick question there. How do you screenshot an email? Do you know what? I should know this, shouldn't I? Straight away. I think it's Control and Print Screen to print your whole screen on a Windows device. But actually, what I always use, if you're on, it's only on Windows 10. I think it was actually on Windows 7 as well. If you're still on Windows 7, if you search for something called Snipping Tool, it's a really great way of screenshotting email. So if you click on your little Windows button, search for the word snipping, there's something called Snipping Tool that allows you effectively to do a new snip, and you can highlight a bit of your screen to screenshot that email. You can actually email from that, or you can save that picture and use it from there. So yeah, there is, I think it's Control Print Screen, but actually I always use Snipping Tool now. It's the best way to screenshot indeed emails and anything else you've got as well. So hopefully that helps answer that question. Great. I think that's all the questions we're going to get in now. So thank you very much for your time this morning, and we'll close down the webinar and have a great day. Thank you.